So, ladies and gentlemen, Anissa is about to come on and rock your world in terms of helping you uproot any kind of PTSD, trauma, stress-related incident that may have happened in the past, giving you practical steps to be able to do that. I know it's so important today's day and age. There's a lot of people with trauma, so definitely stick around for that interview. Before we dive in, I'm talking to you because you're becoming your greatest possible self. You are plugged in, you are listening to podcasts, you're showing up to events, getting the coaching, getting the help that you need. So keep moving forward, keep taking those steps, okay? Next up is going to be the iTunes review of the week. I believe it is by, let's see, DBlue702, who says, awesome podcast. Chris is one of the most passionate and driven people I know. His show is a must listen. D Blue, thank you so much. I appreciate you. And if you want to give us a review, go to beergps.com/iTunes or search Greatest Possible Self on the Apple Podcast Store and give us a review there. Thank you so much in advance for doing that. And I look forward to hearing back from you what you love about the show, what you want to see improved, and how we can make it even better for you. I'm going to introduce Anissa in just a second here. Before that, grab a piece of paper, grab a pen, be ready to take notes because these ideas could be the thing that make all the difference for you. So make sure you stick around all the way through to the end. Anissa is the daughter of a Vietnam veteran, and she was also married to an active duty member for over 20 years. For years, she volunteered at the Warrior Transition Battalion at Fort Riley, Kansas, providing yoga therapy, meditation, and other holistic treatments to the soldiers, family members, and staff. After seeing others struggle and having her own personal struggles with trauma and PTSD, she was inspired to create the Trauma Healing Yoga Therapy Program. In her work, Anissa guides others in the use of effective science-based yoga therapy and other holistic techniques for the management and healing of symptoms related to PTSD and trauma for people who want to control their PTSD and not allow it to control them. She works with people with all types of physical conditions, but specializes in working with those suffering from PTSD, TBIs, and all trauma-related issues, and has been for over half a decade. As a 2-time rape survivor herself, intimately understanding the needs these women face, she also works with women who have been sexually traumatized to help them heal their PTSD and other trauma-related issues with yoga therapy. And we're just scratching the surface with all that, and we have Anissa here. She's ready to rock the house. Anissa, are you ready to bring it? Come on.
I am ready.
We got Buddy over there too. Oh my gosh. Buddy, say hi.
He is my business partner, so he has to say hi to everyone.
I love it. Oh my gosh. How long have you had Buddy for?
Buddy, we've had him for 7 years now.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
I imagine the companionship of Buddy is also a very healing, very empowering relationship as well.
Yes, he is my emotional therapy animal. He is.
I love it, Anissa. That's awesome. So we're going to dive right into the theme of today, which is a foundation of faith. So I just want to hear in your own perspective, what does a foundation of faith mean to you?
Foundation of faith. Having belief in yourself.
Yes.
You need to believe in yourself. And if you don't, that's okay. Find someone who will until you can believe in yourself.
Wow. I love it. I love it. I think it's so important because if we don't have that belief in self, then we won't be able to overcome whatever obstacle that we're facing because we'll think it's bigger than us. We'll think it's more powerful than us. And so to find someone like yourself who can help remind us that whatever trauma, whatever difficulty that we've gone through in the past, it doesn't define us. It's not more powerful than us. We can come out on the other side of that. So I mentioned a little bit about your work in the intro, but in your own words, why don't you share a little bit more about what you're doing today and how you serve your clients?
Well, I help people feel okay in their own skin again. I welcome them back to their bodies. And with PTSD, there's a huge disconnection between the brain and the body. And I help bridge that gap. And again, welcome them back to their bodies.
Wow. I love it. So simple. And I think also so profound because so many people are struggling with accepting, liking, and loving is a really difficult conversation for a lot of people, but loving our body, I think it's a challenge for a lot of people. And I know you had your own journey with this relationship, with accepting, liking, loving your own body. So I want to go back into that journey, Anissa, and talk about yoga. How did you discover yoga? Because I know that's a big part. Or if therapy is the more of the root, tell us where your journey begins.
Well, I didn't want to go to anyone's yoga class. I didn't want to be on anyone else's schedule.
Right.
And I loved yoga. So I wanted to do it for myself. And so I thought, well, if I take a teacher training course, I would be able to keep myself safe and still be able to do what I love.
Yeah.
And so I finished the class. It was a weekend class. And within a month, I had 2 teaching opportunities, 2 job opportunities. And I said, well, maybe the universe is trying to tell me something. So I embarked upon this, and then I decided, well, maybe I should take some more classes because, I have 2 days of training. I might want to look into this a little more, And I kind of got the bug. And so I started taking more and more classes. And along that line, we were living here at Fort Riley, which is right outside of Manhattan, Kansas. It's an Army post. My husband was active duty at the time. We knew a ton of military folks. People are coming and going off of deployments. And I said, the courses that I was taking, the company ran a course called Warriors, and that was for military folks for PTSD. And I said, I should probably take this. I live in the belly of the beast. And so I would be able to help people. And I was halfway through the first day, and I said, uh-oh, the first person I need to start working on is right here. Ding, ding, ding. And I noticed how PTSD had really crawled into the nooks and crannies of my life, and it was holding me back from living the kind of life I wanted to live. And so there we are.
Wow. Wow. So I want to talk about in those early days of volunteering and assisting and helping these people with PTSD. Like what was that like? What did you see? What was coming up for you? How did you serve those people?
It's really interesting. When you're working with the WTB, the Warrior Transition Battalion, there are folks with all kinds of injuries. And what it is, it's a battalion of men and women who have some sort of illness. So I had folks with cancer. I had folks that had strokes and heart attacks, braces. I had amputees, people in wheelchairs. And I would have 20 and 25 people in a class, not knowing, looking around saying, okay, we've got how many on crutches, how many in braces, we've got one in a wheelchair, and everybody else looks perfect. What are we dealing with? And within about a minute and a half, I'd have to try to figure out how I was going to teach this class to incorporate everyone and get everyone's needs met. So it was pretty fascinating work. I really enjoyed it. And the folks that looked like there was nothing wrong, they were probably more needing of it than the folks who were in braces and crutches, because it's those invisible wounds.
Wow. Can we dive into that? Like what is an invisible wound? A physical wound is pretty obvious, right? Missing limb, something that's physically injured. What is an invisible wound?
Someone like me, someone with high functioning PTSD. I don't look all that bad on the outside. But if you were to peel back the layers, you would find my PTSD. And we call it high functioning PTSD. A lot of folks are very high functioning at work, especially for military folks, because that's where they feel comfortable. They were with their brothers and sisters at the time of the experience. And so there's this camaraderie, this kinship. And so they feel comfortable there. And yet when they come home where they should feel comfortable, they don't, because the people they're surrounded by, their family members, don't understand. They don't have that experience. They can't comprehend what they've been through. So it's really kind of fascinating.
Would you say that is it more the individual's perspective that, oh, someone else doesn't understand what I've been through, which creates the disconnect? Or is it some like a family member's inability to put themselves in that situation because they haven't experienced it, that creates the disconnect. Do you know if it's one or the other? I'm curious.
Well, it's kind of a mixture.
Hmm.
I think as humans, our own suffering is so great and so individual that no one could possibly understand our suffering. And so I think that's part of it.
Yeah.
And then part of it is, my husband's never been raped. How could he
Mm.
possibly understand?
Mm.
He hasn't experienced the same thing I've experienced. So,
Yeah.
when I talk with other women who have been,
Yeah.
there's that kinship.
Yeah. Mm.
But for folks who haven't experienced it, how could you could empathize?
I was going to say, what would you recommend, knowing the aspect of therapy, what happens in therapy, what happens in yoga therapy, what happens in, working through these traumas and wounds? What can someone who hasn't gone through that same experience do to be the most supportive or impactful on that healing journey?
That is a great question. Number one, just be there.
Mm.
You don't have to say anything. Don't say anything. It's
Mm.
probably better that you don't say anything. Just be there. Hold their hand, make them a cup of tea, listen. Don't try to solve their problems because it's not up to you. They have to solve their own problems. Just be there.
Mm.
And if they're saying, gosh, I don't know if I want to go to the gym tonight, and that's their jam, I don't know if I should go to my yoga class and that's their jam, I'll go with you.
Mm.
I'll go with you if you want. Just be there. Don't be judgmental
Mm.
because you're not in a place to judge. None of us are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just
Uh,
be there.
I love it. I love it. And it's so simple, yet can be really difficult to do because our response, I've heard a lot about, from Brene Brown and how she talks about vulnerability and shame. Our response when someone is vulnerable and shares that they're struggling or what's going on is to try to fix it because we can't sit with that own
Mhm.
discomfort, that own pain when someone is sharing that. It's like, to have the courage to just be with that, it can be really difficult.
It takes a strong person.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, with your journey of surviving rape and going through that process and healing from that, what would you say? How did you grow as a human being? I've never gone through it. I don't know what it's like, but I'm curious. What did you learn? How did you grow? And what do you want to share with our audience about that experience?
Well, that's a interesting question. I learned that I have to work very hard to maintain my boundaries.
Mm.
Some people are very cut and dry with their boundaries. This is the line in the sand and I'm not going to cross it. When I think you've been through the type of experience that I've endured, our boundaries get very muddy
Mm.
because things that shouldn't have been crossed were crossed,
Yeah.
and I had no control over that. And so from that point on, working on boundaries is really difficult, and I work really hard. And in fact, that's my goal for the year, is to really establish better boundaries for myself. I will put myself at a huge disadvantage so I can help someone else.
Mm.
Um, and that's the servant in me.
Yeah.
But it's also because I blur those boundaries because they were blurred for me for so long.
No.
So that is something, that I struggle with still today.
Mm.
Body image, of course,
Mm.
shaming, guilt.
Mm.
Quite frankly, I kind of got triggered this morning, and I'll be very transparent. I woke up this morning and I had a variety of emotions about coming on and being with you today.
Mm.
I have taped and recorded a lot of other podcasts, but they're not live. They're not streaming live. There's no safety net here. You can't pause it. You can't edit it.
Mm.
And it left me feeling very exposed and raw and vulnerable. And I felt like, gosh, this is like, when I've been raped. And so I had to be my own client today.
Mm.
and I had to take myself through the steps. And sometimes that was just like, okay, Anissa, take a breath, you know? And sometimes you have to do that for yourself, and that's
Mm,
okay. We need to allow ourselves to be human.
mm,
These are human emotions, and
yeah,
we're allowed to feel this way.
yeah. And it's interesting too, because the emotions that you experienced in those really tragic situations and like horrendous situations, those emotions are the same exact emotions that you might experience coming onto a live stream, or that you might experience going onto stage and feeling vulnerable, feeling open, feeling like naked and exposed to people and what they think and their perception and how you will be received. And so to be processing those emotions, especially with such traumatic incidents that you had in the past, and feeling those emotions come up, like, wow, what a challenging, challenging practice. I feel like life is one big practice to be the best that we
Yeah.
can be, to do the best that we can. Yoga is practice, being in the now, in the moment, right? Like, it is one big practice. And I think that's also another way that we can empathize and connect with people, is to say, I may not have gone through what you went through. I may not have had that same experience, but I know shame. I've felt shame. I felt like I was let down. I felt like my boundaries were crossed. So I'm grateful that on this show we're really able to come in a loving, empowering way, and kind of take a look at these things, and with a respectful lens, because it can be difficult to have conversations about these things, because it can be a very closed off place for a lot of people who have experienced these kinds of traumas, and an unwillingness to go there because it's so painful.
It can be painful.
Yeah.
It can be.
Yeah.
But then how are people going to learn?
Mm,
How are people going to be more accepting of themselves and others? We have to show a light onto it.
mm, yeah. Yeah. I appreciate that, and I appreciate your dialogue with letting our audience know whatever has happened to them, whatever it might be. Maybe it's abuse, maybe it's debt. Some people have, like, bankruptcy is the biggest shame burden that they've been carrying. Whatever it might be, just to open up a space that people can communicate about that. So I want to dive into specifically how yoga made a difference in your therapy, in healing, for your own journey, for your clients. Let's dive into that even more.
Well, so once I got a handle on what I was feeling this morning, after I made myself a spot of tea, I got on my mat.
Yes.
And I did a couple of asanas, which are postures. I wound up curling up and taking a bit of a cat nap.
Hmm.
And that's okay too. People think that yoga is this, they have the stereotypical thought of what yoga is, and that's not all what yoga is about.
Mm.
And sometimes it is crawling up on your mat and having a good cry. Sometimes it's crawling up and taking a cat nap. Your mat, my mat, is my greatest confidant. I can
Mm.
tell it anything. It's not going to go anywhere, and it doesn't judge me. And I have this relationship. In fact, I had surgery about 5 years ago, and I took my mat with me.
Wow.
And my husband said to me, you're not getting on your mat like between now and, the next 6 weeks. I said, yeah, I know, but I'm like Linus, I need my mat with me.
The blankie.
Yeah, and he's like, whatever, And so your mat can be a really powerful vehicle. I
Mm.
love the mat because it is only so big by so big. It gives me boundaries.
Mm.
Mm, that
That's
word
good.
again.
That's good.
So, there's a lot of things that come from the mat, and it's not just exercise that people think. If we think of yoga as a big pie,
Hmm.
and we have fitness based and therapy based. When we look at the fitness based, we've got, hot yoga, Bikram, Ashtanga, co ed naked yoga, all that kind of stuff, right? And they all serve a purpose. They're all wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have the therapy side of the house. And within that therapy side, we've got, yoga for cardiac rehab, yoga for Parkinson's, yoga for MS, yoga for cancer, yoga for trauma. Mm. And so I like to tell people, if you need to put braces on your teeth, you are not going to go to a dentist. You're going to go to an orthodontist.
Right.
If you need heart surgery, you are not going to go to a general practitioner. You're going to go to a cardiologist.
Yep.
You need to get your needs met. If you're looking for fitness-based yoga because you want to do things with your body, that's great. Yeah. Go to it. Yeah. But if you have a specific need, you need to find someone who can help you with that need. Yes. If you were to walk down to your corner yoga studio and you have trauma, PTSD, and you get in one of their classes and you're triggered, or you have an emotional release, that instructor, although very well trained to do what they do, may not know how to handle your needs. They might even throw you out of their class because they don't understand what's going on. So you need to get your needs met. And that's really important, is finding the right kind of person to meet your needs. If you've never gone to a yoga class and you find someone who meets your needs, I say, go 5 or 6 times. Same person, same time, same class. Uh-huh. You get a sense of the rhythm of the class, what the instructor is going to do, kind of what's coming next. And decide, do you like the class? Is it helpful for you? Do you like the instructor? And if you don't feel comfortable, find another instructor. Yeah. I think that the instructor has a lot to do with it. Yeah. And when I had a private practice here in town, I had lots of people come in and they say, I'm just trying you out. Great.
Yes. Welcome.
And if you keep,
welcome.
That's fine. Come on in, yeah. And if you don't get your needs met, one, I want to know about it because I want to know what I can do better. Yeah. Yep. And hopefully you'll find someone out there that can meet your needs. Yeah. So try. But also get your needs met in a proper way.
I love it. I love your invitation, the awareness of that there's different types. So make sure that you were finding out what's the type, like intending on the flavor. There's a flavor of yoga, different flavors, and choose the one that is most in alignment with what our need is going into it. Because if you're saying, hey, I'm supposed to go to yoga just because, well, why? Why are you going to go invest the time and the energy to build a habit, to build the consistency for this so that it really impacts and affects your life, Because I think the people who have that reason why are the ones who will stick through it. And also the people who are connected with the why will go and find the teacher, go and find the right delivery for them so that they can succeed with it.
I like it to the cereal aisle at the supermarket. There's all kinds of different flavors, but they all do the same thing. Their breakfast. Yep. And it's just about your taste. Wow. So try.
I love it. And I think in yoga as well, you come in, and at least for me, I come in and my body doesn't do what I want it to do, or I don't achieve the thing I want to achieve. And it's like, what a great opportunity to practice compassion, grace, understanding for myself in the pursuit of being able to do in the next session or in this session what I couldn't do last session or 5 or 10 or 20 sessions ago. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's everyone has their own area of growth in their life, and it's important to find the vehicle that's going to make the difference for them. It's important to find the teacher, the vehicle. Maybe it's yoga, maybe it's journaling, maybe it's dancing, maybe it's singing, maybe it's whatever it is, right? But what we're talking about here today, I think, is important, is the catalyst of freeing ourselves. And I wouldn't say I know the trauma, the type of trauma that you've experienced, but freeing ourselves from the trauma that is keeping us a prisoner from experiencing life to the fullest, to our greatest possible selves.
And I would say towards that, healing journeys are not a one-size-fits-all kind of a thing. It is as individual as your thumbprint.
No.
And so what I tell my clients is to get a notebook.
Yeah.
And write down, what did you try? When did you try it? Who did you try it with? What did it feel like? Did you like it? What did you experience? That kind of thing. And then 6 months from now, 12 months from now, 18, 24 months from now, go back to it and try it again.
Wow.
Because you are a different person at that point, and you're at a different point in your healing journey. And just because it didn't work at the 6-month mark doesn't mean at the 18-month mark it won't work. So you got to keep trying things because we're different in different steps of our journey.
Yeah. And with PTSD and trauma, I want to dive into this aspect of the body as well. It's starting in the body, being rooted in the body. Tell us about that. What do we need to know about that?
That's the important piece of this, because this is what I feel like is not educated to people. People do not understand this. And this is, I think, where the stigma comes in, because people don't understand this. So we have two different brains. We have the upper echelon brain that does all of our critical thinking and math and, whatever. And then we have the reptilian brain. And the reptilian brain is in charge of homeostasis. We never give it a second thought. Blinking, belching, hiccuping, going, letting us know to go to the bathroom, like all this kind of stuff. We don't think about that. Breathing, we don't think about it. It just happens.
Yeah.
That's also where our fight, flight, and freeze mechanism is. And that's important to remember. So, Chris, let me ask you, have you ever seen two dogs fight?
Yes.
What happens when they're done fighting and they're pulled apart?
I love it. They shake.
They shake. And when they do that, they're resetting their central nervous system.
Yes. Very
important. So now you and I are in a car accident, and you walk away and you're okay and you don't have PTSD, and I do because of this traumatic experience. Now here we are, we've sat side by side in the same had the same experience, and yet I have PTSD and you don't. How does that happen? Well, on some level, you must have shook. I must not have.
Wow.
And so I wasn't able to reset my central nervous system. That's how simple it is. We are now able to utilize yoga therapy in a way to help create those that shaking mechanism. So not only are we helping to reset the central nervous system, but we're also helping to release emotional baggage, stuff you don't have to carry. And so in my classes, sometimes my clients say, oh my gosh, this muscle is twitching and I can't walk. And I'm like, great, let it go. This is good. This is good stuff. Shake. Sometimes they say, I didn't feel anything, but I feel lighter. Good. I'm okay with that. You don't have to shake, but you felt it. You feel lighter. That's good. Something must have released, even if you didn't feel it shake. So that's really what it is. It's resetting that central nervous system. And when that doesn't occur, then there's the separation between the brain and the body. And we have a hard time feeling the body. And everything's happening up here. And so we also utilize yoga therapy to bridge the brain and the body. And in my classes, a lot of time I'll be saying, where are you feeling this in your body right now? And quite frankly, I don't really care what the answer is. They could be feeling it in their big toe. I just want to know that they're feeling their body. Yeah. And they're making that brain-body connection.
Yeah, because a lot of us don't have that connection to senses, sensation, because we're so stuck up in our head, fight, flight, or freeze, analyzing, critical thinking, like just not dropped into the present moment. And I think yoga is a great access to the present moment. Now, I wanted to ask about your yoga and what would you say sets it apart from other yoga styles? Like how do you approach it differently than just a traditional yoga instructor?
Well, I have my own style.
Yep.
And so if you go to another yoga therapy class, you might encounter something a little different. For me, I always keep the lights on. Okay. I hardly ever leave my mat. I hardly ever adjust people. I hardly ever touch people. And the reason being, I don't want people to be unnerved by me walking around the class. I don't want them to see a shadow, something out of the corner of their eye.
Wow.
If I do leave my mat, I announce, I'm leaving my mat. I am going wherever. So people know exactly where I'm going and what I'm doing.
Wow.
I do a lot of talking. It is kind of like the Anissa stand-up routine for an hour. We do a lot of talking. We do a lot of laughing. Laughing
Yes.
is so healing.
Yes.
We talk a lot about food.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about the Yankees and the Giants. You know, we talk about shopping, chocolate, tea. Usually we talk about so much food that afterwards we're all like, all right, where are we going to eat? We're always talking. What's everybody doing this weekend? I'll catch up with somebody. How did your kid do in their soccer tournament last weekend? And, we're always talking and, because I'm not a talk therapist. I'm human and I can listen, but that is not my jam. My jam is to help you release the trauma from your body that's held on a cellular level. And so what I'm doing is I'm keeping your brain occupied.
Yeah.
When we go to those quiet places, it can be really scary. And most yoga classes are like very zen. And the instructor's just telling you what pose to move into. Not me. Not me. I'm yakking the whole time. There's not a whole lot of zen going on. And that's sometimes people's complaint. I thought it'd be more zen. Not in my class. No. And so I don't tell people what poses to go into. I invite them. Hey, join me here when you're ready. For folks who've endured any kind of trauma, their power has been taken away from them. And so I'm giving them back their choice, their power. When you're ready, when you're done with that pose, meet me here. Feel it in your body. That gets them in their body, feeling it. And when they're ready to move on, they can move on at their pleasure. It's not up to me to tell them.
I hear that the style that you use is very, very welcoming, warming, nurturing for those people who like at the drop of a hat or a pin or something, in any moment, it could trigger that thing. And so it sounds like you want to really invite them in to experience or explore, be curious about the trigger, but not like you don't want to punch it. You want to say, all right, let's open up to what might be there, so that we can release it, so that we can be curious about it, so that we can explore, play, laugh it away. And also, when you were talking about talking, I think that's really cool, because while people are listening or talking, they're still in the poses, they're still doing the things, they're still, in their body, experiencing, connecting with it, but they're also paying attention to something else as well. So it's almost like they're being present and juggling at the same time, which can, I think, bypass that critical filter of the mind of trying to suppress things.
It's a really fascinating thing to watch someone come in and you can see the cloud above them.
Yeah.
And you can see the stress and the turmoil and just the dark gray cloud, over their head. And they spend an hour on the mat and all of a sudden they kind of float out. And it's amazing. And they're like, I needed this. Yeah, I know you did. I saw it, And I love it. I love it because even if that just gave them an hour of peace, what an amazing thing to have just an hour of peace.
Yeah. How does yoga access as a long-term, more permanent solution and release from PTSD? We talked about, the dog shaking. Can you just be a little bit more specific about what happens in that process, what people need to know about that?
Well, by shaking, we switch off from the reptilian brain to the upper echelon brain. And so that's how we reset the central nervous system. When that doesn't happen, we're kind of stuck still in the reptilian brain. So when I say that I'm a high functioning PTSD folk, that's what I mean. I'm still in my reptilian brain. I'm high functioning. My math skills suck, but but I'm high functioning,
Yeah.
and I don't give directions really well. Um, but that being said, there are things that I've had to accept
Mhm.
because I have PTSD.
Mm.
And one of them is my math skills have really suffered.
Mm.
I could sing you any 80s song, but I can't tell you what I had for breakfast this morning.
Mm.
So my short-term memory is really short.
Mm.
And so these are things that I have to now embrace.
Mm.
So I have lists that have lists
Yep.
to keep me focused. I have a problem with focusing.
Mhm.
And these are all things that because I'm not really up in my upper echelon brain, I don't have access to.
Mm. So
Will
is
I
it?
ever? Will I ever? I don't know.
Yeah.
But at this point in time, I don't.
Well, I think it's correct me if I'm wrong, but it's to a degree, right? To a degree, you don't have access to it because I think to have complete non-use of a compartment of our brain, I don't know if that's possible. Maybe it is, but I think it's just the 99% is in that reptilian brain. 1% is when you really like are in the zone or really feeling good or whatever it might be. Then you have a little bit more access to that. But the majority of time, when someone has experienced PTSD and severe trauma, then they're going to be majority in that reptilian brain.
In the beginning, yes.
Hmm.
And then our goal is to get them more and more up into that upper echelon brain. And
Yeah.
now I probably spend 90% or more time in that part.
Yeah.
But am I quick to startle? Yes.
Hmm.
Um, Again, I have trouble with my short-term memory.
Yeah.
Um, my math skills are, but 2 and 2 equals 5, and I'm good with that. I'm not. Honestly, directions.
Yeah.
People laugh at me. There are days where I really wonder how I find my driveway,
Wow.
and I've lived here for 12 and a half years.
Yeah.
I still get lost in my town.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and I don't know if maybe my skills were lacking beforehand, and this didn't help, but so, but these are things that you have to embrace. I
Yeah.
mean, if you have a heart attack, there are probably things that you're not going to be able to do afterwards.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Yeah. And I think that acceptance with the massive doses of humor, what a great way to transmute whatever stuck energy would have been there, suffering, pain, sadness, guilt, shame, whatever. It's like the laughing and then just like practicing, hey, okay, well, what's the next step? Who can I get help from? What can I do now? In each moment you just practice and have fun with it and don't be so serious about it. Then that sounds like a recipe for just taking the next step and doing the best that you can.
It's all I can do.
Yeah.
I can sit here and cry.
Hmm.
It's not going to help my memory.
You've
It's
done that.
certainly
You've
not.
done that. It didn't work.
I did actually, and no, it didn't. I mean, it's not going to help my math skills. It's not going to help me find any place as I'm driving.
Yeah.
Although, that probably is one of my biggest frustrations is
Yeah.
the directions.
Yeah.
It is what it is,
Yeah.
and so I build in extra time to
Yep.
get to places.
Yep. And the GPS is your best friend.
Well, it kind of yells at me. Turn around! I said, turn around. I have the only GPS that yells at you because, but I think it's over there. Turn around. My GPS and I are not friends.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I love it, Anissa. So I think this is really empowering for people who've even experienced trauma or know people who have experienced trauma. How do people get started with a journey with yoga, especially like let's say they wanted to get into your class, something working with you? Is it only in person or do you have online stuff? Like where do people start with that with you?
Well, I do online.
Okay.
And you have to understand, I live in Manhattan, Kansas, and I live in a town where the livestock outnumber the people. And so I want to be able to reach more people, and
Yes.
the cows are not really good at the poses. So I want to be able to reach more people. So I am online. You can reach
Beautiful.
me at www.traumahealingyoga.com.
Okay.
I have 2 free Facebook groups. One is just for women who've been sexually traumatized. The other group is for men and women who have had any kind of trauma whatsoever. And I have a lot of males in there, actually military.
Mm.
Um, and so, get into those groups and delve into it. If you really want somebody in person, I would say there is a website, the International Association of Yoga Therapists,
Mm.
and they have a listing of all of us yoga therapists,
Mhm.
and you can find someone locally to you that hopefully will meet your needs.
But no one's gonna find you in that list, Anissa. They will only find you here on the marathon because no one is like you. Your humor, your how you show up is one of a kind. And
Thank
I love that
you.
you mentioned the Facebook groups as well because I think that's a great place to look to go get more information. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you put out content and like what it is that you put in there that helps you serve your tribes, your people in your community?
Well, first and foremost, there are questions that you need to answer before you are admitted.
Mm.
And so I'm really particular, safety first. I want to, boundaries, yes. Especially for the ladies group. I have a lot of men who try to get into the ladies group.
Mm.
And what I've realized is that they are trying to profile for their next victim.
Wow.
Scary.
That is
And
nasty.
it is nasty. And so there's questions, there's a reason for the questions, answer the questions, and I'll let you in. I put all kinds of content in there. We talk. We talk about a lot of things that are sometimes raw,
Mm.
sometimes brutal. Some people share their stories, and that's okay too.
Mhm.
That's being real. That's showing up. Sometimes we talk about triggers. I love triggers, by the way. Triggers are my thing. I love triggers, and I know people think it's weird. I love triggers because triggers are actually our friends.
Mm.
And there's a way that you can take triggers and really make them work for your advantage.
Yeah.
And so we talk about triggers a lot. We talk about things, if somebody says, I'm having trouble sleeping. Okay, well, let's talk about, what can we do?
Yeah.
What can we do? Even from a yoga perspective, what
Mhm.
can we do?
Mhm.
And so there's all kinds of stuff. It's about meeting the needs, whatever that need is in that very moment.
So I hear a lot of discussions. I hear a lot of sharing, practical resources, suggestions, coaching advice, wisdom. So that's more of like life. What happens in life, and then when people work with you directly, is it the same experience in a group, or what does it look like when it's one-on-one? Is that individual calls? Is that group programs?
Well, I do one-on-ones.
Okay.
And also later this winter, early spring, I am going to be launching a membership just for women who've been sexually traumatized. And they'll have access to not only live yoga classes with me, but also recorded yoga classes. Because at 3 a.m. in the morning, when you wake up and your brain is racing and you feel like, I really want to get on a mat, it's there for you.
Mm.
Healing is not a 9 to 5 thing.
Mm.
And we might be high functioning, we might have 9 to 5 jobs, but
Mhm.
you got to fit the healing in.
Yep.
And so that it's available to them 24/7.
Yeah, I love that. That customized, whatever you are, whatever you need, it's accessible whenever that is to be able to get that healing at 3 a.m. in the morning. That's when the trigger happens.
And oftentimes it does.
Yeah, yeah. And I do want to dive into that because I think the triggers conversation is important, Anissa. Tell us a little bit more about how do we identify triggers? What do we need to know about triggers, and what can we do to respond effectively to them?
I love triggers. I love them. People think I'm so strange. And I didn't love them until last year. I actually got triggered last January, and I hadn't been triggered in years. And I got triggered big time. I was teaching in a martial arts studio. And I'm in the middle of my class. My ladies are in front of me. And all of a sudden, in the next room, the instructor started making a noise. And it was a rhythmic noise. He would hit two things together and then yell something. Hit some things together and yell something. And it was just this constant, and it reminded me, it reminded me of my first rape.
Wow.
It reminded me of his body slamming into me and him yelling at me. He did it again and he would yell at me. And all of a sudden, I was 28 years ago. And so I ran out to the receptionist and I said to her, he has to stop this noise. And she said, you realize we are in a martial arts studio, right? And I said, no, whatever he's doing right now, he has to stop this. And so I looked at the instructor and he said, oh, I'm sorry. I forgot you're doing yoga tonight. I'll keep it down. And he did. And between the receptionist desk and getting back to the class, I took a couple of breaths. I compartmentalized it. I went back. I taught my class. I don't know how. I don't know how I drove home. And I got home and my family looked at me and they said, what happened? And I said, I got triggered big time. So here I am, I'm in my client hat.
Yeah.
And I said, all right, I got to put on my clinician hat. What's happening here? And again, this is where the education comes in. When you are educated and you know what's happening, then you have choices. How do I want to react? So what I realized is that with memory, when you are experiencing something, the brain takes the memory and breaks it out into all five senses, and probably a couple of other places. But it stores all of the smells in one place, all of the sight in another, all of the hearing in another. And then in a brain that has not had trauma, when you recall the memory, all of these parts come back together and you have a formed memory. When you're dealing with a PTSD brain, unfortunately, things kind of get rewired. And when you recall a memory, not all of the pieces might come back together. So the brain is looking at this memory and says, I don't like an incomplete memory. I'm going to help you out. I'm going to fill in the blanks for you. But the brain is also really structured to think negatively. And it was going back to caveman days, we thought negatively to keep us alive. It was always that fright, that fear to keep us alive. And so when the brain fills in stuff for us, it's usually A, not right, and B, not pleasant. And so now when we're recalling these memories, they're incomplete, they're not correct, and they're usually more frightening than what really happened. So I see a therapist. I'm very transparent about that. I am on medication and I see a therapist myself. And I said, okay, something about that noise. I don't know what it was, but something about that noise triggered me. So when I went to see my therapist, I said, all right, let's talk about this. And we did EMDR around it. That noise apparently was stuck somewhere in my brain. And when I heard it again, boom, there we are. And it filled in a part of that memory. By doing the EMDR, not only was I able to find peace around it, it was real closure for me. And, I said to him, will I ever be triggered again? And he said, Anissa, you're a clinician. Answer your own question. And I said, but I don't like my answer. And my answer is, yeah, I can be, because I don't know where the brain stuck all these bits and pieces. And I don't know what's going to trigger me to resurface them.
Right.
But I know that I can take them to my therapist. I can unpackage them, create a full memory, and have some more peace. So I look at triggers as breadcrumbs.
Yeah. And I think it's also the mindset of fearing triggers and something happening to me, because when a trigger happens, usually I would imagine it brings up a really negative, horrific, I don't want to ever experience that again. And if you
they suck. They suck.
You could shift that to, man, I love triggers. Like, I'm so excited to grow through this next experience. It's going to suck. It's going to be terrible, but I'm ready for it as much as I possibly can be, to be able to handle it resourcefully, to bring it to, for example, for you, to bring it to your therapist, to have someone on your team, to handle it through yoga therapy or whatever the modality is. When you shift that mindset, you are no longer disempowered or controlled by the trigger, but you say, bring on the triggers, because I know everyone that I face head on with, like, just, I'm going to get through it, then I'm able to heal even more, just a little bit more, just a little bit more, just a little bit more.
It's peace. Yeah. It's finding the peace that we so deserve.
Wow.
And there is the light at the end of the tunnel. But if you're afraid of it and you bury it, it's only going to grow and it's just going to be nasty. Wow. You got to face it.
This is powerful. We have Annika, who's out in the audience as well, who said she has PTSD as well, and she's also a psychologist and uses this in her work non-authoritatively, and she'd love to connect with you so you can educate more together. And she said, thank you for your transparency, Anissa. So your message is already getting out there. You're attracting the support and the amazing people who can help you really impact more lives. Because I know, man, I haven't experienced it, but I know so many people are dealing with it, suffering through it, not having answers, not feeling like they can share, or even they just feel so alone and isolated with it. So I just want to say thank you for the work that you're doing and this message that you're bringing to them, because you're really saving people. And I always think of the people who are feeling so alone, so helpless, so lost, and the actions that they take when they're in that position. And some people feel like they can't bear it any longer, and so they choose to no longer live on this earth. And I think that's one of the biggest travesties is, there's people out there who have suffered through similar things, but because they just didn't know where to go or who to turn to or how to seek guidance or how to not feel so alone or misunderstood, that they take that route instead of like someone being there. And you're really here for someone who might be going through a situation like that.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate you having me on. I appreciate being able to get this message out there. I love working with people, and no one is really alone. No one is really alone. And, I'm always telling people, if you feel like you're alone, pick up the phone and call me. I'll talk to you. Get on Facebook, message me. I'll talk to you. And I'll help you through whatever it is that you need to be, because I'm human. I'm not a psychotherapist. I'm not a clinician that way. I'm a clinician another way, but I'm human and I'll talk to you, but we're never really truly alone. And so when people feel that way, it's a travesty. And hopefully if this can help one person, then this is what it's all about.
I love it. Absolutely. And I know there's people who are tuning in right now who have loved this and they want to get more, or at least you've sparked their curiosity. You've opened up possibility that maybe life can be better than what they've experienced. So let's share those groups that you have again. What's the names of them? They could search it on Facebook, and then how they can get a hold of you, your website. Let's share that with them one more time.
If you go to www.traumahealingyoga.com, all of the information is there. You can get to my groups that way. You can, talk with me that way. Everything is there. And I mean, spoiler alert, if you go to the bottom of my website, my phone number is there. You pick up the phone and call me. I mean, Spoiler, hello, it's right there. Because of Facebook, we have to put it on there. So you can call me.
I love it. Well, I love that they just go to www.traumahealingyoga.com and they can get access to all the work that you're doing, all the great things, community support,
Everything.
answers, and definitely not feeling alone, because like I love the day and age that we live in, technology, the ability to connect with each other. It's so easy, yet for a lot of people it has become so difficult. So don't make it difficult on yourself. Like make it
Yeah.
as easy as it actually is, and pick up the phone, call, send a message. And Anissa, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. I will. We'll see you soon, okay?
Thanks.